The Farm Girl Incident. A demon was hunting across the Outer Rim. He was an Inquisitor called the Sixth Brother. His job was to hunt down the last surviving Jedi and end them. The Sixth Brother was broken down and rebuilt by Darth Vader personally. He had unalived Padawans, knights, and hundreds of other Jedi. So when a quiet tip came in about a farm girl with magic powers, the Sixth Brother smiled. Most of his targets were trained knights with combat experience. This one was an unarmed villager sleeping in a barn. This was a free kill. Out in the grain fields on a remote farming planet, a worker had slipped into the threshing machinery, and right before the blades could turn him into fertilizer, a quiet girl had frozen the entire machine mid-air without even touching it. She was a refugee that the local farmers had taken in. No surname, no past, no family. But instead of protecting the poor refugee, one of the witnesses decided that a farm girl with magic was worth a few credits to the right people. When the Sixth Brother landed his ship and walked into the village square, he didn't search for her quietly. He herded the locals together, ignited his red blade, held it to the throat of an innocent farmer, and announced that he would start cutting people apart one by one until the Jedi came out. The villagers wept. A man dropped to his knees, but the Inquisitor pressed the blade closer, savoring the fear, and started counting down. This is what he loved most, when ordinary people learned how little their lives mattered. But then the girl, watching her adopted neighbors about to die because of her, stepped out into the open in her work clothes, completely unarmed, and quietly asked him to let them go. The Sixth Brother turned. He looked at a skinny, weaponless refugee who had just surrendered herself to save a village, and he smiled, because this was the easiest confirmed kill of his entire career. He raised his weapon and lunged. But there was only one problem with his plan. He had accidentally picked the worst target in the entire galaxy. Years before the Empire ever existed, this girl was handpicked as the personal apprentice of the single most powerful Jedi prodigy of the Clone Wars, the man who would one day become Darth Vader himself. She had survived hundreds of battlefields, outdueled professional bounty hunters, and commanded clone armies on the front lines before she was old enough to rent a speeder. The Sixth Brother thought he was executing a farmer, but he was attacking a veteran with more real combat experience than all the Inquisitors combined. The Sixth Brother attacked, but his first lunge hit empty air. He spun, swung, and missed. He attacked again, faster, a flurry of strikes meant to overwhelm the refugee. She dodged all of them, reading him like a children's book. The crowd, expecting a slaughter, watched the Empire's hunter chase a refugee girl in circles and catch nothing but dirt. Humiliated, he leapt into the air and hurled his spinning double blade at her like a flying buzzsaw. It was his deadliest move, but she grabbed it mid-air and thrust it into the Sixth Brother's chest. The refugee was actually Ahsoka Tano, and she would go on to terrorize the Sith and the Empire for decades to come. The Sixth Brother went looking for the easiest kill of his career, but instead was ridiculed and killed in front of an entire village. The Dropout Incident. 15 years after the fall of the Jedi Order, the Empire's chief Jedi hunter was torturing a Jedi. He had finally managed to capture a live one. This Sith was known only as the Grand Inquisitor, a tall, pale, red-skinned creature who commanded every other Inquisitor in the galaxy. He was ruthless. Before the Empire, he had been a Jedi Temple guard, one of the masked sentinels sworn to guard the Order itself. But he betrayed them and slaughtered the people he had promised to protect. He knew exactly how Jedi were trained, how they fought, and exactly where they perished, because he had been one of them. The prisoner hanging in his interrogation field was the weakest target imaginable. He was a half-trained Padawan who had watched his master die in front of him at 14 years old, then ran. He buried his lightsaber, changed his name, and spent the next decade being drunk, bar-brawling, and trying to forget he ever knew what the Force was. He was, by every measure, a Jedi failure. The Grand Inquisitor didn't even care about the interrogation. He knew this man's ragtag little rebel crew would come to rescue him, and that was the real plan. He wanted to lure them all into one place and crush them. Exactly as predicted, his rescuers came. Of particular interest was a teenage Padawan who the Jedi failure had reluctantly taken on as a student. He was desperate to save his master. The Inquisitor herded them onto a narrow bridge suspended over the ship's exposed reactor core, a straight drop into a column of raw energy. And there, he closed the trap. He fought the two of them at once and toyed with them, his spinning blade a red wall they couldn't get past. He let them tire. He let them realize they couldn't win. And then, he lazily threw the Padawan off the edge of the bridge and into the abyss below. The failure lunged, but he was too late. The Inquisitor laughed. But what he had failed to realize was that he had accidentally created the most dangerous Jedi in the galaxy. The failure's real name was Caleb Doom. When he was still a youngling, he had watched his own master throw herself between him and a firing squad of clones, screaming at him to run as she died. He had spent 15 years running away from the Force in fear, but now, there was no turning back. By throwing his Padawan into the reactor in front of him, the Grand Inquisitor had just done the one thing that could end Caleb's fear. There was nothing left for Caleb to lose. The Dropout rose to his feet on that bridge, and something in his face had gone completely calm. He stood up, picked up 2 lightsabers, and attacked the Empire's greatest Jedi Hunter. The change was violent and total. 15 years of rust simply evaporated. He drove the Empire's greatest Jedi Hunter backwards, step by step, along the bridge, his twin blades hammering down so fast the Inquisitor's spinning weapon couldn't track them both. He caught the spinning blade, twisted and cut it clean in half. Disarmed and off balance, the Grand Inquisitor fell and held on to the very edge of the platform. And for the first time in the Sith's long career, he was beaten. As he dangled over the abyss, the Empire's chief Jedi Hunter let go. He preferred falling into the exploding reactor rather than return in failure to Darth Vader. The Slave Incident. On the Sith world of Korriban, one of the 12 cruel rulers of the Sith Empire signed an order to unalive a slave. His name was Darth Thanaton, and he held a seat on the Dark Council, the 12 most powerful Sith who ruled the entire galaxy. Ancient Sith tradition demanded that when a Sith Lord falls in disgrace, every loose end attached to them be cut off. The unfortunate loose end that had crossed Darth Thanaton's desk was a dead Sith Lord's apprentice. This poor apprentice was a weak one, an ex-slave born into poverty with nobody who cared for him. Thanaton did not consider this a fight. He considered it cleanup. He summoned the freshly freed slave and sent them into an ancient, monster-infested tomb on an errand engineered to kill him, fully expecting to never hear about him again. When the slave crawled out alive, Thanaton's interest sharpened into irritation, and he arranged another death, and then another, with each attempt becoming more direct and brutal. By every law and custom of the Sith, the apprentice was already dead, just hadn't stopped moving yet. But then there was one slight mistake Thanaton made. He was accidentally targeting the strongest Sith alive. You see, while Thanaton was busy trying to kill him, the slave had gone hunting for power in one of the places even Sith Lords fear to walk, the tombs of their own ancient dead. There, he uncovered a forbidden ritual, one that let a living Sith reach into the spirit of a dead Sith Lord and drain its centuries of accumulated strength. He went from tomb to tomb, consuming the spirits of long-dead Sith Lords one after another, stacking lifetimes of stolen power onto his own. It nearly destroyed him, but he managed to find a cure just to stay sane. By the time Thanaton decided to settle things directly, he found himself dueling a person carrying the knowledge of 100 Sith Lords. Thanaton was crushed. In front of his own assembled troops, Thanaton's lightning was absorbed. His strikes turned aside, and he was beaten so thoroughly that he ran away in front of his own soldiers. Humiliated, he begged the Dark Council on Korriban to have the slave unalived by all 12 of them at once. But the slave was not weak. He walked straight through the doors of the Dark Council chamber and challenged him in front of every ruler of the Sith. Thanaton threw everything he had, force, telekinetic crushes, and even force lightning. But the slave broke through all of it, advancing on him blow by blow until the Dark Lord of the Sith was crawling backward across the floor. He reached up toward the other 11, begging them to step in and help him. But the council was disgusted. They saw their own member crawling, bleeding, and they ended his life on the spot. the slave of the very empire that had once sold him at an auction and tried to kill countless times, ended up becoming a Sith Lord on the Council of the 12. The Hunger Incident. In the final battle of a brutal galactic war, a Sith Lord used a superweapon to tear a hole into the galaxy itself. The mass shadow generator was triggered above a world named Malachor 5 and crushed entire fleets in an instant. Hundreds of thousands of lives ended in a single moment. So much death concentrated in one place that the Force itself was wounded there, leaving a scar in the galaxy. Out of the deep scar, a monster crawled out. The Sith Lord, Darth Nihilus, survived, but he was changed forever. The detonation hollowed him out completely and left behind nothing but a bottomless hunger to consume the Force. Feeding on the Force was the only thing standing between him and dissolving into nothing. His hunger did not stay small. He did not drain individuals. He drained worlds. There was a peaceful colony planet called Qatar, where the last surviving Jedi of the era gathered in secret. Nihilus arrived in orbit, and in one act of consumption, ate the entire planet. Every Jedi, every colonist, every single living being. An entire world drained to gray and silent rock. Shortly after, Nihilus's servants detected an irresistible target, a gathering of Jedi aboard a station above the planet Telos. A rich feeding opportunity Nihilus couldn't resist. His nightmare warship, crewed by the drained husks of earlier victims, dropped out of hyperspace, ready to consume them all. The closer he came to the gathering, the more excited he was. This was his largest meal in years. When he reached the chamber where the gathered Jedi were supposed to be, he found only one woman waiting for him. And Nihilus, the Sith who ate planets, looked at this sad, broken woman standing alone and saw only one thing: easy prey. But unbeknownst to Nihilus, this was the worst target in the entire galaxy for him to consume. The woman was a Jedi who, in the explosion, disconnected herself from the Force to save herself. She ended up becoming completely numb to the Force and walked away as a living emptiness. The Jedi Council stripped her of her rank and cast her out for what she had become. And for 10 years, she drifted the Outer Rim as a broken nobody. She had the same kind of void in the Force that Nihilus himself was. So when the Planet Eater reached out with his hunger to drain her, he bit down on nothing. Feeding on the Jedi was like a starving man trying to drink from a mirror, and the harder his hunger pulled at her emptiness, the more his own Force began pouring out into it. Unable to find anything to eat, the Predator at the top, the very top of the galactic food chain felt, for the first time in his existence, his own appetite began devouring himself. Weakened and in pain, Nihilus collapsed to the ground. The exiled Jedi, in the moment of Nihilus's vulnerability, pulled out her blade and cut the monster down. His mask hit the deck, and when it did, there was nothing underneath. No body, no man. The robes collapsed, empty, because there had been nothing inside them for so long except his appetite. This is the story of Mitra, the woman the Jedi Council exiled in disgrace, and yet managed to end the single most terrifying being in the entire galaxy. The Farmer's Son. A few years after the Emperor's death, a dark Jedi named Jarek was hunting for a weapon to destroy the universe. Jarek was a former Jedi scholar who had turned Inquisitor and now led his own crew of 7 dark Jedi. Jarek was hunting for the Valley of the Jedi, a lost place of legend where, 1,000 years earlier, an ancient Sith superweapon had detonated and trapped the souls of thousands of Jedi and Sith in a single spot. Whoever found the valley wouldn't just rule the galaxy, he would effectively become a god. And one humble farmer on a backwater moon knew where it was. His name was Morgan Katarn, a quiet man who fixed machines, helped his neighbors, and secretly smuggled refugees for the rebellion. Jarek walked into his home and demanded the location of the valley. The farmer, knowing exactly what would happen to the galaxy if he spoke, refused. Jarek asked again, threatening the old farmer, with 7 dark Jedi filling the doorway behind him. But it made no difference to the farmer. Jarek ended him with a single stroke and left. But there was one slight mistake he made. The farmer had a son. You see, the son was not a Jedi. He had no master, no temple, nor training, and no idea that the Force ran in his blood at all. What he did have was a reputation. He was a former Imperial Military Academy cadet who had defected the moment he understood what the Empire truly was and had become a mercenary. He was so effective that elite Imperial units had nightmares about him. There were task forces designed to hunt him down. When the son learned what happened to his father, he was livid. He was so angry that he obtained a dead Jedi's lightsaber for revenge. This mercenary did something that shouldn't be possible. He taught himself the Force. Out of nothing but grief, willpower, and visions from his dead father, he ruthlessly hunted Jarek's 7 dark Jedi one by one. 7 trained dark side warriors dismantled one by a man with no formal training. Eventually, only Jarek remained. But by the time the son reached him, it was too late. Jarek had already arrived at the Valley of the Jedi and plugged himself directly into 1,000 souls. The final duel was not man against man. It was a self-taught farmer's son against a god. It should have lasted only seconds, but instead, the son met the god blow for blow. Jarek's ego and overconfidence was the death of him. The god lunged to end the poor son's life, but he remained composed. Cut Jarek down. Humiliated at the absolute peak of his strength, the eyeless would-be god crawled towards the energy nexus to draw one more desperate surge of power, but the farmer's son cut him down before his fingers ever reached it. Then the nobody mercenary did the one thing any Sith, especially Jarek in all his hunger, would have never dreamed of. He reached into that 1,000-year prison and set every trapped soul free. The farmer's son was Kyle Katarn, and he would eventually become one of the most important Jedi instructors of the entire galaxy. Every one of these predators chose their target exactly the same way, by picking on who was the quietest, weakest, or most alone. But most often, life has a way of being fair. So make an effort, and be careful about how you treat the quiet people around you. And hey, I hope you have a happy day ahead of you.